The three things that I really want people to remember when they're looking at the tech products that they might be designing or building in some way is that it's not enough to just have good intentions. Number one, good intentions are great. I'm going to assume that most of the people that are trying to design technology products have good intentions, but that you have to actually follow those up with a practice. You have to really think about, well, what are you doing day to day to live out those intentions or not? And you have to ask yourself, so what are the actual steps that I might be taking when I do my work? And where are the moments where I am faced with sort of this dilemma between what is typically done in tech or what my company thinks we should do because they think it's going to be good for engagement or ROI or whatever, and some kind of ethical or moral question. Like, what are you doing when that happens? Are you stuffing that down, or are you pushing on that and asking harder questions? The second thing that I would say is that we have to think a lot about systems. What we're talking about are both sort of large-scale systems in the world, but also systems within a company. So when something goes out the door that has bias in it, or that is non-inclusive or is harmful to people, we have to look at, well, why did that happen? What were all of the failure points that allowed that to happen? And then conversely, what kind of system do we need to have into place? What kind of processes do we need that would prevent that from happening in the future? And I think that that's really about going beyond the individual moments that we each would have and into what does it mean as an organization to change the way we operate and to actually invest in building processes that are going to be less harmful and more inclusive to people. And then the third thing I would want people to take away is that we fundamentally need to think a lot about our priorities at the organizational level, at the human level. What kind of world do we want to live in? And it's very tempting, I think, right now in tech to focus on doing work that is exciting or glamorous because there is a lot of money changing hands. There's a lot of stories in the press that tend to be very positive about how much this company was valuated at, or how rich this 24-year-old founder is. And I think that there's not nearly enough being said about the consequences of what we're making. And so I would say that, I think we need to ask ourselves difficult questions about what are we really prioritizing, and are we chasing after stuff that has negative consequences that we are basically ignoring? So what is your day-to-day practice? What are the processes in your organization? What are you willing to change? And are you really reflecting on the priorities around you? I'm not sure if I'm an optimist or a pessimist when it comes to technology. And in fact, I think I would rather think of myself as more of a realist. I think that there's a lot of stuff that we could get negative about, and I think it's important to critique the technology that we use, even the technology that we like. I am optimistic about some things, though. And one of the things I'm really optimistic about is that I am seeing a tremendous amount of people who work in the tech industry, work in industries related to tech, who are really starting to pay a lot of attention to the things that they're making and the choices that they're making in their work, and are starting to say, hold on a second, I don't know if I want to be involved with that. I don't know if that's what I want to be spending my life building. And I don't think it's a big enough movement yet, but I think it's getting bigger a lot faster, kind of moving from the ground up. And I don't think it has enough influence yet at the highest levels in companies, and that's something that I definitely want to see change. But I am encouraged by how many people seem to be really starting to join the chorus here and starting to step up and say, wait a second, what do I need to be doing differently? And what kinds of questions do I need to be asking? And how do I push back against this? I don't think there's any easy answers to those questions, but I'm really enthused by how many more people are asking them. And I hope that that creates a lot of pressure and puts some tension in these tech companies to act differently. I didn't come up with this book idea all from scratch one night. It actually really emerged over a few years. It started out several years ago. I was talking to my friend Eric Meyer, who was an early programmer on the web and a constant blogger. And he had this really tragic experience with Facebook where his daughter had become gravely ill. She had a really aggressive brain cancer, and she ended up dying on her 6th birthday, and he had blogged about the experience all the way through. So then he wrote this post about something that happened afterwards. After she had died, he received this message from Facebook trying to get him to celebrate the year that he just had. And they took the photo of his daughter and put that in the center of their little promotion and covered it with illustrations of people dancing at a party. And it just broke his heart. And around the same time that was happening, I had started writing about things like the way that forms were often designed online that were gathering lots of information companies didn't need, but also doing it in sometimes really uninclusive ways that could really not work if you were anything other than straight and white and heterosexual. And so, at that point, we started putting our heads together and kind of thinking about all of the ways technology leaves people out. And we wrote this little book called Design for Real Life, aimed at people who design products. And then after that came out, I just started getting more and more people coming to me and bringing up so many other examples of bias and exclusion in tech and really toxic products. And so a publisher asked me if I was interested in doing something for a more general audience as well. And I thought, I think this topic is so much bigger than I originally thought. And it turns out it is. I think if you look at what's happened in tech in this past year, and we see all sorts of big tech companies coming out with all kinds of huge ethical challenges. And, to me, I think the scope of this work just gets larger and larger, and there's so much to talk about.